Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if California remained independent. California started out as a territory that was inhabited, of course, by Native Americans who then came under the rule of the Spanish and then the Mexican. There was also a Russian port in there, but it never grew to become that important that we could speak of a colony. Trade happened in there for a long time, but the population was never that big. Mexico had problems to keep California under check because not only was it far away from the capital, but California also had a history similar to Texas. California was not at first inhabited by American settlers, but actually the Californios, they were opposing efforts of centralization from the capital. It wasn't until the gold rush where California suddenly saw an explosion in their population growth, and it wasn't only because of that. No, the US had the goal to get access to the Pacific coast, hence why California got annexed by the US, and also with the construction of railroads and stuff similar to it, like infrastructure, more and more people came to move to California. California experienced a lot of trouble in the 1830s under Alvarado, and before getting independence, there was already an independence movement in California. The Californios had a multitude of choices: seeking independence, staying with Mexico, getting annexed by France, Britain, or the US. But there was also this so-called coup of 1836, which had no success in our timeline. When Alvarado, supported by Isaac Graham, wanted to get support from Monterrey, the then capital of California, Juan Bandini and Carlos Antonio Carrillo refused to join the rebellion. Due to the fact that nobody wanted to face a civil war, California made a compromise with the central government and chose to stay with Mexico, becoming just a departamento. But what if all of that changed? What if California remained independent? Let's also not forget that technically we are talking about Alto California, which at the time was much bigger than today's California, the US states. In this scenario, let's just say that the coup of Alvarado would have more success. And in this timeline, Bandini, who wouldn't get the Rancho Tecate, and Focarillo, who would just have continued to side with Alvarado and then later on also with Bandini, in the hopes of getting more lands, well, it means that the rebellion would have some success, or the coup of Alvarado would have success. Alto California would adopt the changes made by Alvarado and introduce the Lone Star flag. Sorry guys, no beer flag for California, because in 1836 the Lone Star flag was actually introduced before the beer flag. Around 1836, Mexico with Santa Anna wasn't able to take back Texas. So with that in mind, California would also face small battles and be able to stay independent. The US would be busier with Texas, but still try to keep channels open with California just to, touch California a bit and to get hopes of maybe one day annexing California. California would now face many challenges. Control over the whole territory of Alto California seemed almost impossible. There were powerful neighbors. Mexico was still a threat, and the US, well, they didn't know how to react to the US, and there was still Britain. And then, well, there's no sense of identity in there. In a way, this declaration of independence wasn't because of differences in languages and culture, but because the Mexican government style was considered too centralized. Hence, California would become a very decentralized state, and I would go so far as to say that it could actually become an almost perfectly libertarian state. Not because that would suddenly become the state ideology, but because there weren't enough people to enforce the laws in California. Remember, we are talking about Alto California. Tensions in California would grow and there would be opponents to independence, but all in all, at least the most important cities, they would stay under the government's control. The Mexican army wouldn't be a challenge, and California could see for some years peace, while at the same time dealing with the Native Americans who are plundering the ranches or the ranchos, just like in Texas, for instance. Some people would call for a stronger presence of the government, but at the same time, guns would, for instance, become more and more popular, making California again increasingly libertarian, but out of necessity, not because it was a state ideology. During the US-Mexican War, debates would arise whether to join Mexico, the US, or just to remain neutral. Due to a pro-US lobby, we could see some type of deal here where California could make demands to Mexico at first that they should accept their independence, and then, well, Mexico would of course reject, and California could then turn to the US and make a deal with the US. It would give some legitimacy to it. The US would accept the California independence, but with a big twist. The US would buy a lot of territories for a cheap price from California, and eventually, and let's continue calling California in here Alto California, would have similar borders to OTL's California. They would participate and assist the US in the war and get their independence also then accepted by Mexico because they would enforce it. The US would officially accept California independence, but there would still be some attempts to annex all of California or to associate it with the US in a very tight way. California politicians would understand this and make deals with the Brits, who would be more than happy to have a counterweight to the US in the Pacific coast. Not only that, but due to the high presence of the Hispanic California elite in this timeline, Spanish would remain an important language, and Alto California would technically be a Latin American country. US immigration, yes, would still happen, but we would also see an increasingly high number of Mexicans coming. There would still be a lot of Chinese coming, Brits, and many other nationalities, especially also from Latin America. And California would thus become a true melting pot. The ports would be the main driving forces of the economy, while Oregon for the US would become more developed and more important. Who knows, perhaps Seattle or Port of Seattle would become the most important city of the so-called corridor of the US. Yes, in this timeline, the US wouldn't call it the West Coast, but the corridor, or just Oregon maybe. As for Alto California would need to juggle between the US, Britain, later Canada, Mexico, Latin America, and even probably also China, Japan, and even Australia and New Zealand, until it would have a high enough population, economy, and a well-developed national identity and a good diplomatic network that it could face the US on its own. In this ATL, California will be culturally more Latin, but have this English or Anglo-American twist to it, and be a very libertarian state. Any attempts of centralization or for strong government would be rejected, and free trade would be of utmost importance. It's highly possible that Alto California could become even the most successful state of Latin America, or at least as successful as, let's say, Uruguay nowadays. The politics of the US would change a lot and in many ways, and it's entirely possible that the US could see California as at first this promised land to them that they never could take, and it could then evolve into something where the US would see California in some way as a little cousin, not brother but cousin. And at the end, when the US would just come in with terms in the mere existence of Alto California, it could become the most important trading partner and ally, just like Canada nowadays. Debates about annexing Alto California would cease at one point, whereas in Alto California, such debates may continue for a longer time. The politics of Alto California could be dominated and determined by California and foreign descendants divides, city and province divide with a more liberal and more statist city elite or city population, while the provinces they would be very libertarian and reject any attempt of a too centralized government and be more conservative. And probably there would also be a division between the main interest groups in the economy who would then trade more with Anglo-America, Latin America, Asia or Oceania, for instance. Moreover, English would, no matter what, become a lingua franca in Alto California, challenging or even undermining the Spanish language. This would cause some problems. The head of state of Alto California wouldn't have much power, same as the government, and it's entirely possible that we could see a system similar to Switzerland, where referendums would be a popular and important tool of dealing with political issues. But would this independent Alto California be always a very cohesive state? Would people always live peacefully side by side, no matter whether they would truly be Spanish-speaking Californios, assimilated Californios, or English-speaking foreigners? Would the cities become too powerful and challenge the rural regions of this alternate state? And what about the influences from other countries? And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.